Today is not only Veterans Day, it is also the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, when the armistice went into effect exactly a century ago, on November 11, 1918. After more than 4 years of bloody fighting, the Great War was finally over. The standard view of World War I is that it is a testament to the futility of war. Yet maybe the better way to think of the war, which lasted from 1914 to 1918, including American participation in 1917 to 1918, is that if war comes, it's better to win than to lose. So while any war is a cause for somber reflection, and world leaders, including President Trump, are gathered in France this weekend to reflect on World War I, it's perhaps even more important to learn enduring lessons of preparedness and strength. Most of the chronicling of that war is heavy on mournfulness, along with the implication that war solves nothing. Hence we see headlines such as the tragic futility of World War I and the most unnecessary war in history. Still, we are left to wonder, if the war was futile and unnecessary, does that mean it would have made no difference if, for instance, the US had not fought in it? Would it have been okay if the Kaiser's Germany had won? And for that matter, what about France? That was the country that the German army invaded in 1914, and, following the notorious Schlieffen Plan, the Germans stormed through a neutral country, Belgium, as part of their drive toward Paris. So what should the French have done, other than defend themselves? If one says that the French could have done a better job of planning and preparing for the war, that's certainly true. But pacifism, in the face of a conqueror, is not a good option. Back then, the Germans had their Schlieffen Plan, which was a cynical violation of international law. Attacking neutral countries is a no-no. For their part, the French had Plan 17, which was the right idea, done the wrong way. Plan 17 was unwise because it attempted to convert the glorious idea of military bravery, attack utterance, attack to excess into a formal military doctrine. That is, the French war planners had convinced themselves that their brave soldiers could overcome the enemy through elan, and so that was all that was needed. The French would charge, bayonets fixed, and win with cold steel. Yes, French soldiers were plenty brave, but so, too, looking back to military history, were the American Confederates who launched Pickett's charge at Gettysburg in 1863, and they, too, failed. By the mid-19th century, the evolution of the needle gun had given rise to rapid-fire riflery, which meant that infantry and cavalry charges were both more costly and less likely to succeed. Moreover, advances in artillery were devastating, also, to mass formations. Finally, by the early 20th century, the machine gun was being deployed. By now, mid-September 1914, all the combatants in the West, the French, British, and Belgians against the Germans, were beginning to comprehend that the nature of war had taken a decisive turn. The new ways of delivering firepower, combined with additional innovations such as barbed wire and echeloned entrenchment, made rapid defense difficult, if not impossible. Yet not every military leader got the message. During the war, millions of lives were lost as armies persisted with lethally ineffective frontal assaults. Still, in the years that followed, nations increasingly relied on their industrial power to supplement the blood sacrifice of their soldiers. It's estimated, for example, that from 1914 to 1918, the warring countries fired between 900 million and 1.2 billion artillery shells at each other. In the meantime, other technological advances were emerging from various nations' military-industrial complexes, including the submarine, the flamethrower, and poison gas. Once again, the impact of these new weapons was to make it all the more obvious that the old ways of warfare were obsolete. Yet precisely because we remember past heroes, we should be thinking constantly about the safety of future heroes. The first way to assure their safety, of course, is to avoid unnecessary wars, including wars of choice, but sometimes, inevitably, without any fault of our own, war will come. World War I was such a war. That conflict was so awful, in terms of carnage, that it is tempting to conclude, as many have, that it was futile and unnecessary. According to this popular line of thinking, the fighting was all a tragic misunderstanding, and so as a solution for the future, the thinking goes, let's all have better understanding, let's communicate more. Alas, while such thinking might be tempting, it is not correct. The truth is that Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany understood full well that he was plunging Europe into war in 1914, he had his eyes wide open, and he welcomed the conflict, because he thought he could win. As we have seen, Germany happily trampled through neutral Belgium on its way to France. At least 123,000 Belgians died as a result. Indeed, Germany's September plan proved that the Kaiser and his aides had high hopes for seizing control of all of Europe. Thus he, more than anyone else, is responsible for 15 million deaths. Moreover, the Kaiser, personally, was a warmongering hothead, given to making bloodthirsty speeches to his soldiers, such as, "Should you encounter the enemy, he will be defeated. No quarter will be given. Prisoners will not be taken. Whoever falls into your hands is forfeited." Just as 1,000 years ago the Huns under their king Attila made a name for themselves, one that even today makes them seem mighty in history and legend, may the name German be affirmed by you. But of course, hope is never enough in world affairs. So we must always be prepared for war. As the ancient Roman Vettius knew, preparation for war is the best preparation for peace. We can pray that all wars we fight are necessary wars, but we must prepare, too, so that we can win them all.